The next speaker is Eva Nagyfejeo. I think I said that in the right way. She's a research fellow from the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center at the University of Oxford. Welcome to Norway. And the title of her remarks are International Cybersecurity, Challenges and Solutions. So please, Eva.
First, I would like to say a big thank you to Kate and the team for inviting me for this conference and for giving me the opportunity to talk. I feel honored to be a part of the distinguished panel and discuss the future of warfare and geopolitics. The way I would like to structure my presentation, briefly talking about the geopolitical trends and then move on to how the EU and NATO is prepared to face the digital future. But let me first start with a quote from Eisenhower. He said that in preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Eisenhower's point was that plans usually never go the way we think they will. However, having a plan allows us the flexibility to make a strategic shift when the situation calls for it. So even a best-made plan is bound to fail when situation changes from speculation to reality. And if the plan contradicts the real world always wins. So why do we plan? The value of plan lies in the effort and act of planning. And the success is rarely attributed to an actual plan. It's rather the result of agility. When the team is aware of the overall purpose and vision, and they are empowered to make the best decision based on the current circumstances. This agility requires the team to constantly re-evaluate, replan, and re-evaluate. So thinking about the future of warfare is the hardest to do. Current analysis focus on everyday issues, and they often do not consider the unexpected changes in politics, society, and technology. Now I would like to briefly discuss geopolitical trends that have been already mentioned in the previous panel discussions. So warfare is heavily shaped by geopolitical, technological, society, and military trends, such as deterrence will be reinterpreted by small and big players, and vulnerable states will be more prone to acquire nuclear weapons, which in result will lead to the weakening of the international norms. Most of the international laws in war has already been broken, as we see the situations in Ukraine and Syria. And also several treaties on conventional and nuclear weapons have been either ignored or cancelled. So this might lead to the weakening of the principal pillars of the world, such as the UN system. We will also see many overlapping spheres of political interest between the big political entities such as China, Russia, the EU, and India. And the act of violence will be dependent on the political ideology guiding these big entities. Also, megacities, big urban areas will be the center of future conflict, and it will be also the hiding place of terrorists and non-state actors and anti-state actors. And also, it might lead to states to invest in AI-supported intelligence, also develop facial recognition and biometric and biochemical systems and precise weaponry. Warfare will also shift to the internet. Our social life is now virtual, and cyber tools will be used to also exploit the human insecurities and vulnerabilities in order to erode trust and a cohesion in which our civilized societies rely on. But how institutions such as the NATO and EU is prepared to tackle the unknown, the future of warfare? I would say that when it comes to NATO-EU cooperation, both institutions face the same challenges. And while EU focuses on market regulation, the NATO focuses on security and defense. And it's very important from a resilience point of view. It was very interesting to see that 10 years ago, these two institutions did not really cooperate or talk to each other to the extent they cooperate today. And the big political momentum was in 2016, when they signed the joint EU-NATO declaration, which provided a political framework on defense areas such as cyber defense. In the same year, they signed a technical agreement between CERT-EU and also the NATO's computer incident response capability. and which provided also classified angles into the cooperation. And one suggestion could be to broaden this technical partnership to the CSERT network that was established by Article 12 of the EU NIS Directive. And the CSERT network provides a forum for members to create trust, share information, and cooperate with each other, and also improve the handling of cross-border incidents. Despite the political will for these two institutions to work together, there are still some institutional barriers when it comes to cybersecurity and cyber defense cooperation. Just wanted to mention a few. An important challenge when it comes to cyber defense cooperation between the two institutions is that there's still no established mechanisms and channels to share classified information. It could be also due to that the European Union does not have this culture of securing information compared to NATO. And also, the member states do not have a shared situation awareness of cyber threats. That could also pose another challenge, and lack of will to share information and classified information. And also, some member states who have the capacities to do attribution to attribute cyber incidents, they are often unwilling to share specific details with each other. Another important challenge to mention is the lack of preparedness, or different levels of preparedness of cybersecurity among the member states, since cyber defense is still centered at the national efforts. And although the EU and the NATO has the mandate to cooperate the national efforts, their recommendations is still non-binding. And also there is a significant gap in military and civilian cyber defense capabilities between the member states. And some of the member states are also skeptical to ask for NATO's and EU's help to fit their national needs. It's also with the problem of sharing information. And another important challenge to mention is that they still don't have joint cybersecurity, cyber defense exercises. The last one was held in 2003. And since then, there has been some attempts, and there has been some coordination under the flagship of crisis management, such as CMX 17, NATO CMX 17, and EU PACE 17. However, they still constitute a separate efforts, and it still not provides place to establish mutual cultural trust between the two institutions. So what could be the possible solution to overcome these challenges? And I was thinking about short, mid-term, and long-term solutions. The short term would be that they could already start exercising tomorrow. And the need to exercise together, it should be important to highlight that all communities at the technical, operational, and strategic level should come together and be comfortable with each other and know whom to call and understand how their counterpart functions. Because current top-table exercises, they are happening more at the strategic level, and they do not go down to the cyber-technical level, which creates a discrepancy and disconnection when crisis management hits reality. Also, exercising at all three levels will be important regarding attribution, which challenges both institutions, and also the discussions regarding attribution needs to mature in both organizations. Also, the EU needs to improve its crisis management capacity, and hopefully the new European Commission will help to transform the way the EU does crisis management for NATO and to have a meaningful counterpart. Moving on to the next suggestion would be exchange of personnel. It could happen in the next 6 months, and this way, exchanging personnel between the EU and NATO would, I think, help to create this mutual trust that's still lacking between these two institutions. And the long-term solution, and I understand it's quite difficult to achieve at the moment, but in the long term it might be possible, is to establish a joint EU-NATO cyber unit, or call it a task force, including the private sector, I was thinking here, similar to what European Cybercrime Center has in The Hague, the GCAT Cybercrime Task Force, which was established in 2013, and they put liaison officers from EU member states and also non-EU countries, Australia, US, and Colombia, I think, together in one office, and these liaison officers are forced to cooperate with each other. So if it worked for Europol, I think it could maybe work for EU and NATO as well. And so this would also help to break down the legal and bureaucratic barriers that these two institutions face, and hopefully it could also help to facilitate information sharing on cyber threat intelligence and sharing technical information on cyber incidents. It's also important to mention to avoid the duplication of efforts when it comes to cooperation between the two institutions, such as PESCO Cyber Rapid Response, which was kind of announced last summer. It's important to make sure that this cyber response team won't undermine but support NATO's efforts. And a final big challenge to mention is supply chain. That's been already discussed in previous discussions, and we already see in the Huawei and 5G discussions. And globally speaking, the EU has to decide which camp they're gonna choose in this debate, China or North America, because there is a lot at stake. It's a lot of stake because it will decide how our data is going to be processed and by whom. And it's also the future of internet is at stake because, for example, what are the norms for responsible state behavior? And what role the state should have in an open, free, and multi-stakeholder domain. And it would be good to see an EU and NATO position saying that they want cyberspace to remain open, free, and multi-stakeholder. And of course, China and Russia is going to challenge us in this regard. And finally, I just would like to finish my presentation with a quote, and to answer the question how we best prepared for the future of war is planning. And policymakers, bureaucrats should have the possibility to choose from alternative scenarios, alternative options, because if they don't have that, they will just carry on doing their everyday tasks with no regard to the future. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva.